One of my earliest memories is of my gran catching me barking orders at my brother and calling me Prime Minister. Relatively arrogant even at 4, I remember quite liking the idea of that power. 18 years on, I can confidently say I don't want to be the Prime Minister. But I am interested in the power that they hold and the decisions that they make. I want a future that's just, equitable, sustainable, healthy, and happy. I'm sure you do too. Which means we need the people in power to be making good decisions. My gran was kind of on the money in terms of ambition though. I've ended up a city councillor, which means I'm involved in decisions around things like planning, the library, and rubbish. I want to tell you a bit about this, about how decisions that affect us really get made, and how I think it could all be done a bit better if we stopped just focusing on the money. We're the first generation to be worse off than our parents. A fact I don't think will necessarily surprise you. We know we're in a crisis of crises: housing, cost of living, climate. And when I looked to the people in power, I realised that I didn't feel represented, considered, or listened to in their choices. But I also grew up in a community that was incredibly connected, and I saw good change happen when good people got involved. So when the opportunity to run for council came up, I took it. I wanted to feel some hope and agency over my future. I wanted to have a go at making better decisions. Maybe a tiny bit of it was that power thing. Just kidding. I was elected last year, and it has been a very steep learning curve. I'd never worked in a big organisation before, let alone government. I didn't really know how decisions actually get made. I knew, as you might, that every 2 weeks we have a thing called a council meeting. We sit in our chamber and then we debate on items and we raise our hand to vote on them. It's all very legit, and I have a microphone and a name tag and everything. But informally, decisions that affect us are made all the time, in small meeting rooms or literally over an email. And regardless of the decision being made, there has to be a why. And that reason comes from the information that's available to the person making the choice. So that information is critical. But I've realised that it's not telling us the whole story. If I'm in a meeting and we're talking about a new project, the questions are often, how much is this going to cost? Is this a smart spend of our money? If we spend our money on this, then what loses out? They're all good questions from good-intentioned people who want the best for our city. But if our goal is to be a creative city, then choosing an option based on how much it costs, and that alone, doesn't feel quite right. We're also constantly trying to track our progress on these goals. We want to make sure that our choices are successful, right? It makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that sometimes the way we measure the progress isn't matched to that end goal. We have a goal that people are part of socially connected neighbourhoods. This means you know the person on your street. You bump into them, you trust them, you care about them. But the way that we measure this is through population density. And who says just because there's more people living close to each other that they care about each other, or that they even know each other? For all we know, the only interaction a person might have with their street is when they get home from work and they're sitting waiting for their garage door to open. More people doesn't automatically equal more connection. And when we zoom out from local government, we see that Australia's marker of success is equally mismatched. We're supposedly a successful country because of our high GDP or gross domestic product. It's a financial metric that also goes up during times of conflict or climate disaster. But a country going through conflicts or climate disasters doesn't feel like a successful country to me. Economics just don't paint the whole picture. Let's take bikes. If I thought that our city should have more bike lanes, people would say, well, it's a lot of money to spend on something because then we're going to have to keep spending money on the upkeep. And I'm not an economist, and I'm not some bike infrastructure expert, but what I can tell you is that if more people were riding their bikes, those people probably would know the people on their street. They'd bump into them when they're riding. They're probably healthier and happier because they're outside more, and they'll be emitting less carbon. It's a win-win-win, but maybe not on the money. So, as it turns out, my grand plan to change decisions if we change the people in power was relatively incorrect. Because we can't just change the people in power. We have to also change the information we're giving them and the way that we're measuring the progress on goals. The great news is that countries like Canada, Bhutan, and New Zealand are already doing this, with well-being and happiness indexes embedded into government decision-making. But in Western Australia, well, the idea of a well-being index has sat in the too hard basket for government for many years and election cycles. But it's literally not that hard. In Wales, they've introduced the Wellbeing for Future Generations Act, which sets up an independent commissioner whose entire role it is to make sure that actions by government meet 7 wellbeing goals. And it drastically changed Welsh decisions. When the commissioner challenged a road widening, she said, "Is this creating a healthier, more resilient, or more equal Wales?" And the truth was, it wasn't. The project didn't stack up, and that money was then invested in better public transport. There are plenty of good people in power who can still make bad decisions. I'm potentially one of them, making what I think is the right call based on the information in front of me. But we need better decisions now, and looking just at the money is not going to get us there. Here's the other fun part. I've realised that this whole focusing on just the money thing impacts each of us in our everyday lives too. Whether your school cares more about your grades than your happiness, or you feel the pressure to get the high-paying job because that means you're successful, I've felt those pressures too. But I also accidentally made a choice that completely disregarded the economic outcome. And that was choosing to become a counsellor. A rough calculation tells me my hourly wage is probably about $20 to $25, which is less than I would earn in hospitality or retail. But I love my job, and it's not lost on me that I was lucky to have accidentally made that decision. But it's also true that I wouldn't be standing here if money was the only factor in my choice. We don't often think of happiness or well-being as a government issue, but it can and it absolutely should be, because that's what's going to make our future worth being excited about. Our governments are meant to be for us, so we can ask them to do better. We have to start telling them to measure what really matters and to start acting on what really matters. But first, we have to figure out what those things are for ourselves. Thank you.